Hey there, island dreamers, locals, and anyone craving a slice of paradise. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time, to the Fun in Key West podcast, where the vibe is always laid back, the stories are salty, and the drinks, well, they're definitely frozen. I'm your host, Michelle O'Connor, your unofficial tour guide to the Conquered Republic. Whether you're planning your first trip, your fifth trip, or you're just daydreaming about trading the cubicle for the ocean breeze, you are in the right place. Here's the deal. This podcast is your insider's guide to all things Key West. We're talking where to eat, hello, conch fritters and key lime pie, where to drink, spoiler alert, there will be rum, where to stay, and all the quirky, wonderful things that make Key West the one-of-a-kind paradise we all love. Plus, we'll keep you up to date on the latest happenings, festivals, events, maybe even the occasional Hemingway look-alike sighting. And just to keep things spicy, we'll be bringing on some amazing guests now and then, locals, business owners, and people who know the island like the back of their sandy hand. So grab your flip-flops, pour yourself a cold one, and let's escape to the island state of mind together, whether you're tuning in from your hammock or your commute, while wishing it was a hammock. We've got all the Key West goodness coming your way. Thanks for being here. It's going to be a lot of fun in Key West. Let's dive in. Hey, welcome back to the Fun in Key West podcast. I am so glad that you are here. Okay, quick question. What if I told you that some of the biggest decisions in post-war America didn't go down in D.C.? They went down in a breezy little White House right in Key West. Yep, I'm not kidding. It's Historic Marker Monday, and today we're talking all about marker number 59, the Harry S. Truman Little White House, tucked into Truman Annex. We've got presidents, poker tables, tropical working vacation, and Truman's 175 days soaking up the island while, casually running the country. Big thanks to today's sponsor, Trusted Tours, and their seriously cool white glove tour. Check it out over at FunInKeyWest.com/Truman. Okay, so grab your cafe con leche, get comfy, let's dive in.
Welcome to Fun in Key West, where every day feels like a mini fest. Grab a drink, take it slow. We'll show you where the locals go. Food, fun, and stories to tell. Hidden gems you know so well. Your Key West experts here to say it's fun in Key West every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Fun in Key West podcast. I am so glad that you are here. Today is another episode of Historic Marker Monday, and today we are going to be chatting about a place. Let me kind of set the stage for you. What if I told you that some of the biggest decisions shaping post-war America were discussed not in D.C., but actually in Key West, inside a breezy white house tucked in Truman Annex? Yep, that is the Harry S. Truman Little White House, and it's historic marker number 59, and it's in, you guessed it, Truman Annex. And today we're talking presidents, we're talking poker tables, we're talking tropical retreats, working vacations, and why this little house has such a big place in American history. Before we dive in, have you ever toured the Truman Little White House? Or is this one of those places you've walked by a dozen times? You're like, you know what? One of those days I'm going to get over there and do that. Let me know. Let me know in the comments. And if you're there, be sure to say hi as well. But I'm going to let you know, today's episode is sponsored by Trusted Tours, and they have a really cool tour that I want you to check out over at FunInKeyWest.com/Truman. This is the White Glove Tour, and this is not your average just walk through the Truman White House. This is the kind of tour that you get an exclusive small group, and it's up to 6 guests. And that's led by an expert guide that walks you through all of the Little White House. You get behind the scenes glimpses of Truman's custom and original bar, exclusive photo opportunities at his desk, and the custom built poker table, access to the VIP White Glove Lounge, private collections, presidential exhibits, archives, refreshments, a keepsake souvenir, and even a VIP ride in President Truman's 1950 Lincoln Cosmopolitan limousine to the Truman waterfront. So, if you love history, or you know somebody who loves history, or you're looking for that unique Key West experience, I'm telling you, this is the one that you should check out. FunInKeyWest.com/Truman. And you guys, be sure to check that out. So, let's head back into let's talk about the Truman Little White House. The Truman Annex is one of those places, as you wander around, it's just calm, it's quiet, it's serene. You get lost in the palm tree lined streets, the beautiful homes. And I always remind you, there are several historic markers that are dotted along the way of your travels through the Truman Annex. And one of them is the Little White House. And this house was built in 1890, and it was originally built as two homes. It was like a duplex. It was built for the commandant and paymaster, and this was also known as Quarters A and Quarters B. By 1911, though, this home becomes a full single-family residence. But before Truman ever showed up and the place was renamed as the Little White House, there was a president who showed up and had a visit there. And that was, we're going to get there in a little bit, but I'm just going to tease that. So Truman wasn't the first president to visit there. President William Howard Taft, he's the one that visited. He visited in 1912. Other famous people that have actually stayed at the home before Truman, you had Thomas Edison. And we talked about a little bit this in one of our trivia questions that I put out there. Thomas Edison actually stayed in the home for about 6 months during World War I. He was brought to Key West to help with some of the innovations and inventions that were being considered, and his expertise were very much needed in a lot of the research that was being done. There's all these little cool little Key West history nuggets that get dropped along the way as you explore these historic markers. So long before there was military strategy, there was also invention and transportation and national leadership was happening in this place long before it became a presidential retreat. Imagine if you were the walls of this house. You've had naval commanders there. You had President Taft visiting. Edison was there for 6 months. Imagine the stories that were being told and lived while visiting this house. So just imagine that. So President Truman first comes to Key West in 1946. And what happened was he was ordered by his doctor to go, the story goes that he was ordered by his doctor to go to Key West to relax, to get away from Washington, D.C. and all of the burdens and everything that were part of Washington, D.C. And so from 1946, this is how much he loved Key West. He did that first visit, and then from 1946 to 1953, he had 11 working vacations to the Little White House. He spent a total of 175 days visiting Key West. And I want to make it very clear, a working vacation. He literally was working and running the country and still acting as president, even while he was in Key West. So he wasn't just escaping to nap under a palm tree. And he didn't pretend his inbox didn't exist, even though back then it was all snail mail. He actually worked. He met with his advisors, he reviewed documents, he went over a lot of policy, he made decisions. He used the house as a true presidential retreat and as an operating office. And you can see a lot of that when you tour the home. So, here's a question for you. Could you work from Key West? Or would, like, by the time noon and the sun was up, you were like, nope, I've done enough and I need to get out and go do something else? Let me know. Put it in the comments. Let me know. I'd be curious. What's interesting, though, is the little White House is connected to a lot of big decisions that happened, post World War II. During Truman's time, some major national and international issues were discussed and actually worked through while he was in Key West. I mean, he spent 175 days there, so the presidential duties had to continue and move on. So imagine the time frame we're in. You had the post World War II rebuilding of Europe. So a lot of discussions were around that, including the Marshall Plan. You had the Truman Doctrine and the efforts to contain communism that were part of those discussions. The recognition of the state of Israel. You had civil rights actions being discussed, including executive orders about federal hiring and contractors. The Korean War, including connected calls for a ceasefire. You also had the eventual merging of the Department of War and the Department of Navy into what became the Department of Defense, and now is back to being the Department of War. So, this is the part I really want you to sit with, because you can be walking around Key West thinking about, beaches and roosters and where you're going to go for your next happy hour, and then suddenly you're in Truman Annex and you're standing in front of the little White House where decisions tied to the Cold War, civil rights, and the shape of the modern military were being discussed right there in Key West. And I think that's the magic trapdoor of Key West. It's a place where, on the surface, it's all about happy hours and sunsets and all of the fun things that you can do in Key West. But there's a lot of history that is connected to what presidents, especially Truman, made decisions about. Maritime history and U.S. history is all connected to Key West. So, did you realize that this much presidential business happened in Key West? If you didn't know, put a note down in the comments. I'd love to know if this was new to you. Truman's daily life in Key West, though, is where the story actually becomes more human. You have President Truman, who spends so much time in Key West that he has a rhythm. He loves his morning walks. He gets up, he goes for his walk, he wanders down to the water, and then he would work through his documents. He would meet with his staff, and then, of course, at night there was poker, because there was a poker table there that was made for that. That custom-built poker table is part of why you really want to check out that White Glove tour. It's so fun to talk about, but this tour, or just being able to go into and take the standard tour over at the Truman White House, lets you have that opportunity to have history come alive. It lets you see what in the textbooks we're really talking about when you talk about the little White House. It's about a president enjoying Key West and getting his health back and feeling invigorated. It's about tropical evenings. It's about having discussions with his advisors. It's about making decisions. It's about cards on the table and poker being played and big decisions that are probably sort of maybe being discussed over poker, but those really large decisions happening when they start work in the morning. So it reminds us that history isn't just dates and policies. It's people that were actually in the rooms making decisions and choices and taking breaks and enjoying their time in Key West and laughing and thinking about what they were going to do and helping to move the country forward. So Truman returned actually after he left being president. He returned to Key West. He loved it so much. He returned to Key West 5 more times. So he made 5 post-presidential visits to Key West, and that was between 1957 and 1969. He did visit the little White House, but when he visited post-presidential, he actually stayed in private residences. But he's not the only president that is connected to that. So we had Taft in 1912. You had President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who used the home for meetings in 1955 because he was recovering from a heart attack. And again, great place for him to recover and recuperate, because he saw the impact that it had on Truman. John F. Kennedy used the site for a summit meeting with the British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan in March of '61. Former Jimmy Carter visited And of course, President Bill Clinton used the home as a weekend retreat in 2005. So while Truman is actually the star of this home, it has a lot more presidential connections than just Truman. So I'm curious, what president would you like to learn more about in terms of having a conversation that they had about their times in the little White House? Would it be Truman? Would it be Taft? Would it be Clinton? Would it be Kennedy, Carter, or who else? What kind of stories would love to hear more about? So this historic marker has a lot of impact, and you can see why. And this is why you take these tours and you go in and you experience them. Because these historic markers are really easy to pass by. They sort of blend into the scenery a little bit. And I get it. You're walking around, it's hot, you're heading somewhere else. It's one of those things that you're like, do I stop? Do I not stop? Stop. Read the historic markers. If you have time, take the tour, because I think the Truman White House tells a lot of stories, and it tells it simultaneously. It's a place, it's a story about the military, it's a story about a president, it's a story about Key West, and it's a story about American history. But I also think it's a very human story. It's about a president who found enough peace in Key West to do some of his hardest work there. And when you tour the home, you see how he incorporated his life and his presidential duties there. So the Little White House is proof that Key West wasn't just an escape. It's, where history happened, and it was where Truman decided that was where he felt most comfortable in having his advisors and making a lot of those decisions. So let's circle back to today's Sponsor Trusted Tours and that White Glove Tour. An amazing tour. I'm telling you, you should check it out. So you can figure out now that why the desk matters, because he actually worked and used the Little White House as a presidential spot. He played poker. A lot of poker was played there. The bar matters because it was custom made. The grounds, the way they're set up, and you get to figure out and see all of those archives and the stories that are behind a lot of the things that are there. So be sure to check that out over at FunInKeyWest.com/Truman. So if we were taking the White Glove Tour, what would you be most excited to see? Let me know. Would it be the desk? Would it be the poker table? Would it be the custom bar? Would it be the limo? Would it be the archives? Would it be the gardens and the tropical fruit trees? Let me know. Let me know down in the comments. And do you think you would behave presidentially if you were staying in Key West for like 175 days? Now, I know he didn't do that consecutive 175 days. It was over 11 visits. But imagine you're coming down with all of your entourage, and some of the photos that you see, he's wearing a tropical shirt because he decided in Key West he was going to be Harry Truman in Key West, who was still president, but he wasn't all in his blue suits and his black suits. He approached Key West as a place where his mind relaxed and he was able to enjoy the area and enjoy his life, but still do his work. And you really get that in the photos that are shared there that you see in history and also around the home. So the next time you're wandering around a Truman Annex, be sure to check out the Little White House. If you have time, take the tour. Take the standard tour to figure out if you can take that White Glove Tour. But I think it's really a cool way to show the impact on American history and how it was right there in Key West. So be sure to, like I said, check it out. Let me know what you think about that tour. There are so many more historic markers in Key West. There's over 100 of them, and they're scattered around Key West, and I encourage you to check out all of them and get the stories behind them. We do a lot of that over at FunInKeyWest.com, where you can check out our historic marker walking tour, self-guided. So there's a little bit more information there about where those are located. We're putting together a map that shows you where a lot of those historic markers are and can be found. And if you're over there, be sure to check out our book club because we do a lot of reading on books that have some sort of connection to Key West or the Florida Keys. In the meantime, let me know, have you visited the Little White House? Have you taken the tour? Have you taken that white glove tour? I would love to know more. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. You guys have a great day, and we will talk to you later. Bye. And that, my friend, is a wrap on historic marker number 59. Let's be honest. Who knew a little White House in Key West held that much history? Truman with his 175 days, his morning walks, his poker nights, and casually making some of the biggest decisions in post-war America between rounds of cards. Not bad for a, quote, working vacation, right? So here's what I want you to do before you head back into the sunshine or go along with your day. If you're in Key West, go check out that tour. Seriously, that white glove tour from our friends over at Trusted Tour is absolutely the chef's kiss. The custom bar, the poker table, the desk, even a ride in Truman's 1950 Lincoln limo. Come on, grab your spot over at FunInKeyWest.com/Truman. Now, let me know, have you visited the Little White House yet? Or is it living on your one of these days list? And what would you be most excited to see? The poker table, the bar, the limo, the gardens. I want to know everything. So reach out, let me know. In the meantime, keep exploring. Head over to FunInKeyWest.com for our self-guided historic marker walking tour and map. There are over 100 markers over there, friends. So many stories just waiting for you to check them out. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. You showing up means the world, and I love sharing these little slices of Key West history with you. Now go enjoy your day. Maybe grab a coffee. You've earned it. I'll catch you next time.